Okay, hello, welcome everybody. It is my great pleasure to introduce Professor Lennart Levi. Now, Professor Lennart Levi has been the ISMA International President for many years. Let me just outline to you who Professor Lennart Levi is. Emeritus Professor of Psychosocial Medicine, Karolinska Institutet, Stockholm, former member of the Swedish Parliament. Professor Levi Lennart was founder and director of Division of Stress Research at the Karolinska Institute and of the National Swedish Institute for Psychosocial Medicine, member of the WHO expert panel on mental health, and temporary advisor to WHO, ILO, UNICEF, and EU. His over 300 scientific papers and books in many languages include the European Commission's Guidance on Work-Related Stress, Spice of Life, or Kiss of Death. He was chair of the World Psychiatric Association section of occupational psychiatry and was awarded the Royal Swedish Medal of Merit for pioneering achievements in the area of stress research, the Compostela Award, and other. Lennart, it is my very, very great pleasure to welcome you to this interview. And I think I've known you for many, many years. And I would say over those many years, you've always been really a leading light in the field of stress and stress management. And I thought today would be a great opportunity to have a conversation.
It's mutual. Carole, it's mutual.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. And I just thought today would be great to have an opportunity quietly, just even if it's via Zoom, to talk to you and to see, to ask you some questions, which I think are really important. And I know you certainly will have some important answers that people will want to hear. And I really want this interview to go up on our website, the ISMA's website. And as you were ISMA's international president for so many years, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to actually ask you some of those questions in an interview so we can get a little bit more of an understanding as to who you are and what is it you do and some of those important things coming up for us. So I know that, first of all, welcome. So the first question I'd like to ask, and I know we've worked on these questions together, is what would you include in occupational medicine, mental health? Is it simply treatment of symptoms, intervention against situational causes, or promotion of well-being? What is your thoughts on that, Lennart?
Well, of course, all three. Treatment of symptoms means help here and now. And no doubt this is needed by countless people. Intervention against situational causes. If you have a shoe on your foot and there is a pebble in the shoe and you suffer from the pebble, you can be treated with psychotherapy and with interventions against the foot, but a logical thing to do is to remove the pebble. So to do something about the situation that is causing stress, not just about the symptoms provoked by it. And now there is a fantastic option because we have the mandate for the first time ever. The United Nations 193 member states have agreed on an Agenda 2030. And that includes 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And among them, you find Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which is decent work. And just imagine if all good forces on the globe could collaborate, promoting that. So not just avoiding what is causing disease and ill health, but also promoting well-being. And that is something we have got the mandate from all the member states in the world to do. And we would be foolish if we didn't do something about that. It means approaching the stressors, not just the stress. Mm. Does this make sense?
It makes complete sense. So what you're saying is decent work is one of the 16 Sustainable Development Goals in the UN Agenda 2030. Why would you like to implement it through higher education?
Well, because today's students are the decision makers of tomorrow. So if they can be taught how to cope with all the challenges offered by working life today and tomorrow, it would be an immense benefit for all. And that includes, of course, physicians, but also psychologists and economists and technologists and administrators and what have you. So if all these young people who are students today, but one day will govern the world, at least close to them, it would be an enormous advantage. Otherwise, you know, we can go on talking and talking and talking, and not very much will happen. But now we have been asked by all the governments of the world, united in United Nations, to do something about it. And it is an enormous challenge and opportunity to do just that.
And do you think the students would be excited about this thought about doing that? Do you think they're on board?
I think the students are more on board than the teachers are. The teachers often are governing their turf. This is my specialty, don't touch it. I know perfectly well what to do. But young people are usually curious, and if their curiosity are met by giving them the opportunity to influence what they are being taught, I think options are something important, very important, will happen in this problem area.
So could this be done simply by adding it to a higher education curricula?
Well, you know, adding it as a small course doesn't make any difference. Well, it can be of some benefit, but not change the essential problems. But if you can integrate it into teaching, whatever is being taught that is related to decent work, to human health, and to human education, then you have an opportunity to influence virtually everything. And the Karolinska Institute, my own university, has done just that. I approached their board and well, made my best to convince them and succeeded a couple of years ago. And the day after, the president of the Karolinska Institute, which is Sweden's leading medical university, contacted me and said, yes, fine, let's do it. And what should be done? Well, we decided on a major conference on rethinking higher education, inspired by the Sustainable Development Goals. And it looks like this. I think you can see it.
I can. Yes.
You see not just one goal at the expense of the others, but the integration of all these goals combined, the entire package. And then there is something called the International Association of Universities. It is an umbrella organization covering 640 universities around the globe. And they, in turn, collaborate with the universities of Commonwealth, I think the British Empire's universities, and also the French-speaking world. And altogether, this means 2,000 universities. So just imagine, Carole, just imagine if 2,000 universities, or even just half of them, or 1/4 of them, would do what we are discussing now. it would have an enormous impact. So it's not just simply adding a small course or even a bigger course. It's integrating decent work as related to economy, technology, psychology, health, everything.
Lennart, are you positive? You've been working, I was going to say to you, you've been working in the field for many, many years. Are you positive about the way that we are going at the moment? We're in the middle of a pandemic that in time will come out of it in due course. But do you feel positive in the way that we're going?
No, well, to some degree, yes. I'm much impressed by the International Association of Universities. I happen to know its president. It's a lady called Pam Friedman. She's professor of medicine something, and she is very much aware of what it is all about. And she has been successful in naming 16 universities around the world, each for one of these sustainable development goals, from number 1 to number 16. And then to attach to this lead university a cluster of about a dozen other universities, again around the world, with the task to do precisely what we are discussing. So no silo approach, not a very narrow approach, but a very broad, integrative approach. I remember meeting my good friend and colleague, Sir Michael Marmot of London University. He uses to say, look for the causes behind the causes, not for the heartache or for the hyperventilation or for the sleeplessness, but for the causes of all these symptoms, to do something about them. Is there anything in their relationship between husband and wife? Do they have problems with the economy? Have they lost their job? And so on and so forth. All these interrelated, yes, things in our existence. And you know, it's easy to say, well, we can talk and talk and nothing will happen. Some 12 years ago, I think, no more, some 16 years ago, I wrote a letter to your Prime Minister of that time, Prime Minister Tony Blair. And I wrote, dear Mr. Prime Minister, our countries are different, but also similar. And the differences and similarities would be a good cause for collaboration. And then I put the letter in the letterbox, and then 1 month passed. And then there was a call in my home. This is 10 Downing Street. The Prime Minister has read your proposal. He likes it. Do come here. And we did. We were, myself and Sir Cary Cooper, Professor of Psychology. We are old friends and collaborators. And both of us came to 10 Downing Street, and we hoped to meet Mr. Blair, but we didn't, because we met a senior advisor who said, you may understand that was in the middle of the Iraq crisis. You may understand that the Prime Minister is somewhat occupied, but he likes your proposal. I said, fine, but how do we start? He said, well, we are ready. I said, sir, we can't collaborate with 10 Downing Street. That's not the correct level of collaboration. He said, with whom do you want to collaborate? I said, well, with the Department of Health. He took the telephone and dialed the number and said, I have two professors here, a Swedish one and a British one. They will visit you in 20 minutes. The Prime Minister likes their proposal. Collaborate with them. Make it happen. And it did happen. You know, we had a very good meeting with a lot of cabinet ministers and professors in London and subsequently in Stockholm from both countries, both politicians and academicians. And we had good discussions. Now, I don't know for sure whether this was the beginning, whether it was what made Tony Blair take the initiative of the Foresight program. But I believe it was, because then he said, we want to promote well-being. And we want to do that in all areas of life. So he put 400 researchers worldwide to work, and they produced some 80 scientific reports that were published by the British government, and then one final report that was published in 2008, 12 years ago. It was presented to the public by Professor John Beddington, who at that time was the chief scientific advisor of the British government. And it was well received. And I had lunch with Professor Beddington the following day. And I said, this is wonderful for Britain, but what about implementing it also in Sweden? Why not coming to the Swedish government and presenting it to them also? And he said, yes, why not? And did precisely that. So a group of half a dozen British people, including him, came to Stockholm and met our government and discussed what to do and how to do it. And you know, this is the way to work. Of course, the chances of having a reply from the Prime Minister if you send him a letter are not 100%, very far from that. But occasionally it works. And what do you risk? You risk the cost of a stamp. But the most important thing is silo solutions don't work. If you say occupational health or occupational mental health at any price, that's not a good solution because the price can be too high. But if you say mental health is important, economy is important, development is important, technology is important, everything is important if combined, if integrated into a major pattern, like the jigsaw puzzle. And you know, that needs to be taught. And that to be comprehended necessitates critical thinking. You have to question your own assumptions. Ethical thinking. What does it mean in terms of good and bad, right or wrong? Systems thinking. Not making like this, or like this, or like this, or like this, but using all the relevant aspects in analyzing the problem and trying to solve it. And systems thinking is, in fact, a science of its own. It needs to be taught. And that is the idea. If this can be made, the entire problem area will move very rapidly and in the right direction. You know, I'm surprised that the 193 governments of the world did, in fact, accept the idea of Agenda 2030. It's fantastic. You know, there are quite a number of governments in countries with policies not very attractive to us. But they said yes, probably without understanding what they agreed to. But as far as they have agreed, we have an enormous mandate that we should utilize here and now.
What would you say, Lennart, to somebody who's watching this, who's coming into the field of stress management, mental health and well-being? What advice might you give to that person who's just maybe starting out?
Well, perhaps the same as the one I got from Michael Marmot. Look for the causes behind the causes. If you have a pebble in your shoe, psychotherapy is not what you need in the first place. You need to remove the cause, the pebble. So try to identify it and try to analyze what effects the removal of the pebble will have in other areas, because it's so intertwined, it's so complex. I think that Albert Einstein once said, simplify as much as possible, but not more. That's the point, not more. Don't oversimplify. But you have to simplify, otherwise people will not be able to comprehend what you are trying to achieve.
So can we simplify it sufficiently that people will understand?
My impression is that you do precisely that. You do a magnificent work. I'm very impressed by what ISMA in the UK is doing. So, you know, it's a long way to Tipperary. It will take time, yes. But if you start now, it probably in your lifetime, it will materialize. For the first time ever in the history of mankind, we have a mandate. Otherwise, previously we hadn't. We could talk and talk and talk. And now we can walk the talk by teaching the decision makers of tomorrow what to do and how.
So we can walk the talk with the decision makers of tomorrow, which has got to be right, because they are the future generation. If we look at industry today, Lennart, do you think that managers today have a more difficult role and job to do in helping them to build their resilience and reduce stress?
Well, we have the pandemic of the COVID-19, and that has struck very heavily. Entire working life. Many people are working from home. Many people have lost their jobs. Many managements, many firms are approaching bankruptcy. So they are facing serious problems. But again, also this can be seen not through one tunnel, a tunnel vision, a silo, but taking into account the complexity of human life. It's easy to say, it's not easy to do, but it is possible to do. And if people are taught how to do it, including, of course, economists, they are very important actors in this field. We can't do it alone, you know, if some physicians and some psychologists insist on that, they will shrug their shoulders. But if we can convince them that it is in their own interest and in the interest of their companies and in the interest of their countries and in the interest of mankind and of the interest of the globe, they might collaborate with us. So you have a fantastic task facing you. You as a person and you as the leader of ISMA. And you are doing it very well. I'm impressed by what you do with small resources. But try to enter into a dialogue with the decision makers. The decision makers of today, as I did with Tony Blair, And then, you know, as you correctly said, I was entering the Swedish Parliament, and I was working as a member of the Swedish Parliament for 4 years. I was the oldest member. You know, I'm 90 plus. At that time, I was 76 to 80. I was the oldest. But they listened to me, usually quite nicely. They didn't take every proposal I had. I was a bit afraid of them, I can tell you, you know. I was shy. All these big shots telling them what to do. But occasionally it worked. And I was repeating again and again, look for the causes and do something about the causes and use a systems approach.
So, and would that work?
Well, in fact, it was proposed long ago, 1986. This was published. It was published by the International Labour Office, which is a UN agency, together with WHO, the World Health Organization. They had something called the Joint ILO-WHO Committee on Occupational Health. Its 9th session took place in Geneva on September 18 to 24, 1984, quite a number of years ago. And Carrie Cooper was there, and I was there, and someone from NIOSH was there, from the United Nations, from the United States. And we were a group of some 10 or so specialists discussing for 1 full week. And we formulated this report, Psychosocial Factors at Work, Recognition and Control. This was submitted to the to the WHO Executive Board and to the ILO governing body. So both governments of the 2 organizations, and both approved it. And it was made public policy. And then it was sent to 180 or so governments, probably put on a bookshelf, read by a few people and forgotten. It's quite interesting that some dozen years ago, I was called by ILO, and the person at the other end of the telephone said, we are interested in psychosocial factors and health. And I said, but you already have it. She said, why? No, not so. I said, oh yes, I was a member of it. And it was made a policy document in 1986. Oh, she said, oh, could you please send me a copy? And that tells the story, you know. There is a big science policy gap. Things are known but not implemented. And it's quite difficult to get them implemented. And if you implement them in the wrong way, that is through a silo, the effect will be not very satisfactory. So systems approach, ethical approach, and critical approach, combined with the goal of implementing Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals agreed upon 5 years ago by all the governments of the world. So, dear friends, simply do it.
I think, yeah, listening to what you say, I love your story. I have heard your story about number 10 before, but I love that story because it's evocative. You said for the sake of a postage stamp, well, now you'd probably do an email. You might do a postage stamp, I don't know. but nevertheless, it's going out there and doing it. Everybody can make a difference. And the other thing you were talking about, you keep on using this word, which I like very, very much, the word collaboration. And to my mind, there can be nothing more important, because particularly at the moment, there are so many people working in the field of stress and mental health. The space is quite small, but there's getting more and more people. Yet there's still a lot of work to do. So from the years that you've been doing it and I've been doing it, and there'll be plenty of other people after you and me to continue. The most important thing is the information is there. It's use the information is what you're saying, and actually roll it out. And you know what you're saying about stress is look behind the causes, look what it's all about, as you said about Professor Marmot. So I think that there's what we've heard from you today, that it has been really, it's very interesting to hear, because it's simple. And that's what you've said. It is simple, but it needs to be done. And I think it, in some ways, it's as simple as that, which is to do it. And just do it comes to mind. And I think there are many people who would welcome listening to you more, the books that you've written, the papers that you've written, alongside as well Kerry Cooper, who we know is your very, very close friend. And to actually have all of that together, yes, the information is there, and we have to go on to the next stage, because the world of work has changed, and the modern world of work has seriously changed. We will come out of the pandemic in due course. At some point, we will come out of it, but we won't go back to the same way of working. There may be different stressors that we have to manage, and to help other people to manage as well. So as a final thought from you, Lennart, for the people that are watching this video, what would you say to them as a final thought in terms of a positive way forward? What would be your last thinking on this?
It's 3 words. Just do it. Just do it. Start to collaborate with others. You can't do it alone. Don't close one eye or the other eye. You have to use all your senses, all your faculties, critical thinking, ethical thinking, systems thinking, and with a focus on Agenda 2030. Not everyone has read Agenda 2030. Do it. And, you know, there is, of course, some difficulty to getting new ideas accepted and implemented. But if enough people collaborate in trying, it will eventually work. So why not start today, tomorrow, at any time, but do it. Don't expect anyone else to do it. Do it yourself. Do it in the context available to you. Why not some of your members of the parliament?
Yes, well, if you got to Tony Blair, well, you nearly got to Tony, you got into 10 Downing Street, there's still a 10 Downing Street. I think the things at the moment, they've got rather a lot on their minds. So I don't think I'd get an appointment to go and see them. But nevertheless, there are years ahead, and we will come out of the pandemic and we will go forward. And there's a lot of research, a lot of papers that have been written. You've done so much in the field. We want it to continue. You want that to be your legacy so we can go forward. And we have that agenda. And I think that it's most important that people can view this, watch this, and think to themselves, what else can I do? And every person has a voice. Every person can do more than they are. But nevertheless, if we collaborate, we're going to be even stronger than if we go out there just by ourselves. So start out by yourselves and then collaborate, which is what you've been saying for years and years, all the time that I've known you. And it's as I get older as well, and I listen to what you say, it has more meaning for me, because I may have heard the stories before, but they're so evocative, they're so meaningful, and they are really insightful. And that to me is the most important. So for people that are watching this, whatever year it is, we're now in 2020, it doesn't matter, we'll watch it in 2025 or 2030. It doesn't matter, because I think that the most important thing you're saying is collaborate, just do it, look for the causes behind the causes, and realistically follow that, and make sure you speak up and speak out. So Professor Lennart Levi, it has been my great pleasure as chair of ISMA UK, to say thank you for all your support. You're always there at the other end of an email or phone call whenever I need you. Thank you for supporting all our conferences and summits over the years, and even trekking over to London last year, which you did when we could do it. And this year, taking part in our global online stress and wellbeing summit. It has been a great pleasure to host you then, to speak to you today. And thank you so much indeed for the interview, because that is so meaningful for all of us. So do you have a last word that you would like to add before I sign off and say farewell and au revoir?
Just do it. Do it. Talking is not enough. You know, there is a Chinese proverb. It reads, words do not cook rice. Words do not cook rice. The rice needs to be cooked. So start doing it. Not necessarily in the United Nations, not everyone has access to them. One example is my compatriot, Greta Thunberg. She was 15 years old when she sat down outside the Swedish parliament with a sign reading about the climate crisis. And now she is talking to the Pope and to the British Parliament and to President Macron of France and to the chairperson of the European Commission. You know, it's fantastic. This little girl, and she does it. And she says, don't listen to me. Listen to science. Implement science. And that is the message. And she's right. If she can do it, we can too.
I think that's right. And I think it's a wonderful way to bring this interview to an end, which is to say one small person, doesn't matter what size you are, can actually do that. That means that the world is open to us. The world is our oyster. And to think to ourselves that if you have a passion, you have a vision, that vision can become a reality. And that reality can be spread around the world. So we come back to your word of collaboration. Collaborate and integrate and work together. So therefore, yes, one voice is powerful. More than one voice is even more powerful. Your words of just do it is what is going to be something that people are going to remember from this interview. Lennart, Professor Lennart Levi, let's give you a full title. Let me say thank you so much on behalf of ISMA UK for giving us the time to have this recording. It will go onto our website, people will watch it. People may want to get in contact with you, which is absolutely fine. I'm sure you'll steer them in whichever direction they want to be steered in. But if it actually makes a difference to one person or a dozen people or 500 or 1,000 or 1,000,000, let's just say we go forward, we make that difference, we carry on with the campaign. For all the years that you've been doing it, there's still more to do, an awful lot more to do, but we have the science, we have that there. Let's do it, let's go forward. Professor Lennart Levi, Lennart, thank you so much indeed for your time. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.